Souldiers is a very ambitious and interesting Metroidvania with gorgeous pixel art and inventive level design set in a beautiful world divided by a few enormous areas that will take you some time to explore. The layout of the world really reminded me of Zelda games, with the enormous areas being like a dungeon or temple where you get new items and abilities. I thought it was a fresh take on this genre, but I can imagine some areas will become a bit tiresome and will also be a bit overwhelming, especially the Great Pyramid, which is the second level in the game. The Great Pyramid has a lot of cool level design, but it's way too complicated for a second level. It would fit better as a late game area. Luckily, the innovative level design and boss fights make sure it doesn't get too stale and frustrating, but it is a lot to take in for sure. The whole game is really overwhelming, to be honest, because it has a lot of content, so it will take you at least 20 hours to finish it. But to give it a bit more replay value, you can choose between 3 classes with their own playstyle. I went for the mage, but you can also be an archer or a scout, so your experience could be different than mine, because you have played a different class. I only finished this game as the mage, for the sake of this review, but I'm sure I will try out a different class later this year. I don't think the overall experience will be that different, because the world layout and the level design will still be the same. So I think I can judge this game fairly, even if I only played as the mage. Okay, with that out of the way, let's start with the overall presentation. Once again, the pixel art is visually stunning, and the same goes for the smooth animations. The world building and the sound design is also really great. You can see that a lot of time and effort went into the creation of this game. But just like Aeterna Noctis, it may be a bit too ambitious. Some areas or boss fights are really creative and a nice breath of fresh air, but some of them just can go on for way too long. Sometimes there were some balancing issues, like the gameplay or the level design asked so much anticipation or memorization of you that it became a bit frustrating. I personally really don't mind a bit of challenge, but I can imagine it can scare you off. The same goes for all the items you can equip and all the different spells you can use. There is so much variety, so most of them you will never equip or use. The same goes for your throwable items. I just went for the bombs, and sometimes in certain situations I used something else. I really like the idea of having so much room for different builds, but it wasn't really necessary. What really could have been better was the skill tree, in my opinion. You are really limited in what you can unlock. Most of the perks will be unlocked when you reach a certain level, but by the time you have reached that level, you already have enough skill points to unlock it instantly. This skill tree was really disappointing, because I expected so much more from it, especially if you look at the scope of this game. You have so much freedom in this game, but there's barely any freedom in leveling your character. But something I really enjoyed was all the switching between the elements and the effects they have on certain objects. There were some nice gimmicks that came with some of these elements, and I really enjoyed the creativity behind it. Like transforming in this tiny blob, so you can crawl through tight spaces, or creating sand walls or bridges by hitting these gems. Many enemies were also vulnerable against certain elements, so it added a bit of strategy. I must say that switching to a different element in stressful situations was sometimes a bit wonky, but overall I really enjoyed this design choice. I don't think this game is too difficult, but I do think some areas and some gameplay aspects are a bit overwhelming. For example, when you save, the frame rate drops like crazy, because all the enemies respawn. And if you fast travel to a different save point, it takes some time to load. There's just so much going on in this game that sometimes the game itself has problems with keeping track of everything. The save points are well balanced in my opinion, but one thing you must keep in mind is that you will not respawn at the last save point when you died during a boss fight. Instead, you will respawn at the start of the fight, so when you are low on health potions, you are kinda screwed. So, my advice would be to always store up on the max amount of potions when you have the chance. So in general, Souldiers is a very ambitious Metroidvania that can be a bit overwhelming and also a bit wonky in some design choices. I personally really admire games like this, because they try something new and exciting, and it means that sometimes the gameplay has to suffer a bit. If you look at the big picture, Souldiers is a really memorable and exciting adventure that takes some time to complete, but at the end it was totally worth it in my opinion. And besides the main storyline, there are also a lot of side quests to complete and other collectibles to find that will make your character stronger, so the amount of content is really worth your money. I highly recommend Souldiers if you would like to play a game that has a great adventure for you in store, that besides some frustrating moments really is an experience you haven't seen a lot in video games before. So be ready to explore this visually stunning fantasy world full of enormous set pieces and many memorable moments that really should be interesting for fans of this genre.